Hello guys, welcome back to Web Application Penetration Testing Training. In today's training, we'll be looking at carrying out HTML injection in the Flash applications. So in order to carry out HTML injection in the Flash applications, we need to first understand what is HTML injection. So when an application does not properly handle the user supplied data, an attacker can supply valid HTML typically via a parameter value and inject their own content into the HTML page. So guys, in the case of the HTML injection, the attacker can inject her own HTML code into a particular web application and modify the web application as per the attacker's need. So let's understand this with the help of the attack scenario in this slide. The attacker discovers the injection vulnerability in the internet banking application and then decides to use the HTML injection attack. The attacker crafts a malicious link including his HTML content or his injected HTML content and sends it to the user via an email. The user visits this page due to the page being located within a trusted domain. The attacker's injected HTML is rendered and is presented to the user asking for a username and the password. The user enters the username and the password, which are both sent to the attacker's server. So using the HTML injection, the attacker was able to modify the internet banking website to display a fake login page. The attacker tricked the user into entering the username and the password, and then the username and the password was transferred to the attacker's website. Now let's understand carrying out the HTML injection in the Flash applications. When a Flash application does not properly handle the user supplied data, an attacker can supply the valid HTML, typically via a parameter value, and inject their own content into the Flash content. Let's understand a bit of basics of the HTML in the Flash applications. The Flash applications have the capability of processing the HTML content and displaying it to the user. You have the text field objects in the Flash that can render the HTML by using the following setting. So you have a text field by the name tf. If you set it as tf.html is equal to true and you give the HTML content into the tf field, it will then process this particular content and display it in the Flash application. So let's take a small example. So guys, here's the vulnerable Flash application and we have a button by the name HTML injection. The code that is there behind this button is HTML var is equal to HTML followed by the bold tag followed by test followed by the end of bold. So when we click on this particular button, it will process the HTML content over here and make this particular part, that is the test word, to bold. So let's see this in action. I click on this, it processes the HTML content and displays the test character in bold. So using the text field in the Flash applications, it converted or it processed my HTML content. So guys, if some part of the text could be controlled by the tester, an anchor or an image tag could be injected, resulting in modifying the GUI or carrying out the cross-site scripting attacks. So guys, let's look at carrying out the HTML injection in the Flash applications. The attacker can use the anchor tag or the image tag for carrying out the HTML injection in the Flash applications. So if I have a parameter in the Flash application that is vulnerable to HTML injection, then the attacker can use either of the payloads that are mentioned over here or here to inject the HTML code into the Flash application. So let's look at the first example that's given over here. You have ahref is equal to javascript : alert. The code that is given over here will be interpreted by the Flash application, and once this code is executed, it will display a pop-up of alert 123. Similarly, let's look at the second example, that is calling a function. As you can see over here, the anchor a href is equal to as function colon function comma argument. The as function allows the href link to call an ActionScript function. We'll be seeing this example in the next slide. Similarly, the attacker can also use the image tag for embedding the Flash applications or executing the malicious codes in the Flash applications. If you look at the third example over here, that is the image source is equal to evil.swf. So if my Flash application accepts an HTML code, then this particular evil.swf will be embedded into the actual Flash file. If you look at the fourth example, that is image source is equal to JavaScript colon evil code, then this will be interpreted by the Flash application and it will execute the JavaScript code. The two slashes that you see over here is basically necessary to bypass the Flash player internal filters. So let's quickly look at the demonstration for carrying out the HTML injection in the Flash applications. Here's my vulnerable Flash application, and as you can see over here, I have a button by the name HTML injection. So once I click on the HTML injection, it will process the code or the HTML content and display it on this Flash application. So let's quickly click on this particular button, that is the HTML injection. And you can see over here we get the content, that is HTML and bold text. So now let's understand the piece of code that goes behind the HTML injection button. So here's the vulnerable code that is present behind the HTML injection button. Let's understand the code. The on release over here is nothing but when you click on the button, this particular code will get executed. So let's first concentrate on the orange code that you can see over here. So as you can see over here, the create text field is used to create a new text field by the name my_txt, and the get next highest depth is basically used to assign the coordinates, that is 10, 10, 160, 22 on the Flash screen. The third line that is over here is my_txt.html is equal to true will actually make the my_txt to process the HTML content. And finally, the my_txt.html text is used to assign the HTML content to my_txt. Now let's understand the if conditional statement that's given over here. As you can see over here, we have a Flash variable by the name HTML_var which is not defined. So if it is not defined, then it will execute this particular code. That is HTML_var is equal to HTML, bold, text and end of bold. So by default in the Flash application, the HTML text will be assigned to the HTML variable, and as soon as we click on the HTML injection button, this particular piece of code will be interpreted by the Flash application and will be displayed on the screen. Now let's look at how we can carry out the HTML injection in the Flash application using this vulnerable code. So from this vulnerable code, we come to know that we have a global variable which is not defined by the name HTML_var. So in this slide, we have the code that we will give in the HTML_var parameter to carry out the HTML injection. So you have the first piece of code, that is the HTML_var is equal to ahref is equal to as function colon get URL comma JavaScript colon alert XSS. So you have the as function which allows an href to call an ActionScript function, that is the get URL, and then followed by the argument that is nothing but the JavaScript colon alert. So when this particular piece of code is interpreted by the Flash application, the as function will call the get URL function of the ActionScript and will execute the code, that is the JavaScript colon alert XSS. So let's see this in action as to how it works. So here's the vulnerable Flash application and you have the HTML injection. So once I click on HTML injection, it will execute the default code, that is HTML followed by the bold text. Now let's input our vulnerable parameter over here and the payload, that is you have the HTML_var, that is nothing but the vulnerable parameter, and you have this particular payload, that we are assigning it to the HTML var. So as you can see over here, ahref is equal to as function colon get URL. That is, the as function will call the get URL in the action script and will execute the JavaScript colon alert XSS. Since we are using click here and we are using the anchor tag, the HTML injection Flash application will process this code and display the click here. So let's first load this particular code and click on the HTML injection. So as you can see, this code executed and it displayed the click here in the following screen. So once I click on this, the JavaScript colon alert will get executed and display a pop-up. So let's see that. So as you can see, the code got executed and displayed me the XSS pop-up. So in this way, the attacker can carry out the HTML injection and carry out the cross-site scripting attacks or load the evil Flash applications using the HTML injection. So guys, in this training module, we learned as to how we can carry out the HTML injection in the Flash applications. That's pretty much it in this module. Thank you.